There are three major parts of the brain: the forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. The forebrain is the biggest, so we're going to start there. The thalamus is located here, and it processes all the sensory information with the exception of smells. And it operates the thalamus operates kind of like a railway station, clustering information and sending it to its proper cortex. For example, you have all these senses coming into your brain all the time, and it can get really confusing. And it's all going through the thalamus. And what the thalamus is going to do is it's going to be like, alright, let's take all these, which will be visual signals, and we're just going to take them all, we're going to send them to the back of the brain, to the primary visual cortex, and we're just going to send all of those there. And then we're going to take all the green ones, which they'll be sound waves, and they're all going to kind of collect. The thalamus is just going to collect those together, and we're going to send those to the primary auditory cortex, so they can be processed there, and you can figure out what people are saying and what you're hearing. And it just keeps doing that. Like, all the yellows will go to one cortex, all the oranges to another, and it just keeps sorting them. And that's basically how the thalamus works. Even though the hypothalamus is only about the size of a kidney bean, it's in charge of so much. Hunger, thirst, temperature, sexual motivation, your fight or flight response. Your hypothalamus regulates all of these. While the hypothalamus keeps us alive, it's the limbic system that's responsible for our emotions. The weird thing about the limbic system is, scientists can't quite seem to agree on what structures are included or where it is. However, these structures are generally located around the border of the cerebral cortex, which is where the limbic system gets its name. Limbic meaning border. In broad terms, the hypothalamus, the hippocampus, and the olfactory bulb make up the limbic system. The hippocampus is the area of the brain responsible for forming new memories. And if this area gets destroyed, then you don't form any new memories. If you've seen 50 First Dates, then you kind of get that idea. The amygdala, this little almond-shaped thing right here, is important in learning fear and processing basic emotions. Next is the cerebrum, which is the largest part of the brain. It's the wrinkly folded part that you're probably most familiar with when you think about the brain. It controls things like thinking and learning and your consciousness. They kind of look like little black lines here. Are called the cerebral cortex, and they come into play in a bit. The cerebrum, as you've likely heard, is separated into two halves, the right and the left. Those are called the cerebral hemispheres. The cerebral hemispheres are connected by the cerebral callus. Each hemisphere is divided into different sections called lobes, and each of those lobes is kind of in control of its own thing. Temporal lobe, which is located about here, around your temples basically, and it is in charge of auditory processes. At the front of the brain is the frontal lobe, which kind of makes remembering its name rather easy. It's also the largest lobe and contains the primary motor cortex, which is in charge of the movement of all your muscles. However, not all muscles are created equal when it comes to the primary motor cortex. Next is the midbrain, which is this little segment right here that lays between the forebrain and the hindbrain. This little thing right here, is the reticular formation, and it runs through the hindbrain and the midbrain, and it regulates sleep and arousal. Oops. The hindbrain, which is the green that you see right here, it's made of three parts: the medulla, pons, and cerebellum. The medulla attaches to the spinal cord and controls things like blood circulation, breathing, sneezing, and salivating. The pons, which actually means bridge, is a bridge of fibers that connects the spinal cord to the cerebellum. It's also involved in sleep and arousal. The cerebellum takes commands from higher brain centers and organizes that information to coordinate movement and maintain a sense of balance.